Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final Bookkeeper Radio episode for 2017. We hope you've enjoyed the pre-show music, the topics, Pete's fashion tips and entertainment, of course, and our fabulous guests throughout the year that we've had. It's been an exciting first year for us on Bookkeeper Radio, and Pete, very much looking forward to 2018 to bring some new ideas and fresh content to our listeners. We're going to finish 2017 with a bit of a bang, however, and tonight we discuss the hotly debated topic of bookkeepers working with accountants. Joining us as our special guest tonight, we are joined by Clayton Oates. Good evening, Clayton.
Hey guys, g'day Pete, Kelvin. Thanks so much for having us on the show.
Buonasera, big fella. Buonasera.
Pete, do you want to give us a bit of a background on Clayton?
I can do that, Kelvin. As you know, there's clearly two versions of the Clayton Oates story. There's the one we all see on social media of a guy touring the world, playing golf and socialising in all sorts of exotic places. And then there's the second version, which is probably the real one, which is of a guy that has to pay for the first version. So he started life as a humble accountant and quickly saw the light and evolved and into his true passion, which is seeing great technology find its way into clients for better solutions to improve their businesses. And as a consequence, he's been working with accountants and bookkeepers over a long period of time. He's a much in demand public speaker, both here and around the world. Geez, you sound important, mate. And
I wrote it well, didn't I?
Not to be understated, he got a special guest appearance at the highly regarded ABN conference in Sydney last year. And even better, he's a great friend of ABN, Clayton. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, absolute pleasure to be here. It's an honour to be on the show. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Terrific, mate. Well, thanks, Pete, for that introduction. Just setting the scene for tonight, we're going to get down and dirty with a couple of the issues that we want to unpack. Just some of them for you will be as a source of new clients. Our bookkeeper survey tells us that over 60% of our survey participants enjoy great relationships with accountants. So we're going to get Clayton's thoughts on that aspect of the relationship tonight and how that might change. We're also going to have a bit of a look at what might be holding back accountant and bookkeepers from cross-referrals, how cloud technologies might have changed and repositioned that relationship that we once knew between bookkeepers and accountants. Are the two professions collaborating more? And are the big winners the clients? Or is it every man and woman for himself or themselves? Of course, establishing good communications with accountants in the network and the importance of that relationship. And we're also going to get Clayton to view into his crystal ball and unpack a couple of things for us there as well. So to kick things off, just a reminder, of course, if you'd like to get involved in tonight's discussion, there is a couple of ways you can do that. There's a Q&A panel or Q&A chat box on your screen there. So if you want to type your question into that, we'll be able to filter those in about 30 minutes' time. We can ask your question to Clayton. Or alternatively, if you'd like to join us live, then hit the raise your hand button on the screen. In around about 30 minutes, I'll tell you how you can do that. And there's our little orange man. Where's his Christmas hat, Clayton? Where's his Christmas hat?
There you go.
That's it. Well done, you.
All right, well, let's get things going, Clayton. With the cloud evolution in full swing, and of course showing no signs of slowing down, we've obviously seen an impact in the way bookkeepers now process their jobs and deal with business systems for clients via a whole range of different add-ons. So has that line in the sand that I guess once upon a time we saw as quite distinct between bookkeepers and accountants being blurred at all?
Yeah, I think technology is probably helping reveal the relationship in a way, being a catalyst, I suppose, to crystallise that relationship for the positive, and also can be quite challenging as well. I think just going back a step, I mean, the bookkeeper, traditionally has been probably someone that's been more connected to a small business. I know that's no surprise to everyone on the call today. You guys are more present, just through the nature of actually being in the business more regular, perhaps on a monthly basis or even weekly if you're processing payroll or doing whatever task you're undertaking. So you're probably more the connected advisor. There's all this talk about being the trusted advisor, and I think technology has started to nip away at the fringes of each profession's tasks, and that a bookkeeper probably has got that sort of role of becoming more the trusted technology identifier, taking technology and implementing it into small business. Just going back a little bit further, I mean, ultimately, I think technology's had a promise to deliver for decades to small business. And I think we need to really focus on what it is that small business needs and wants from us as professionals. And that does involve both parties working together now in alignment to actually benefit the client. So I think if we're centered and focused on what the client needs and wants are, then we can happily coexist and actually benefit from that coexistence over time. But automation, I think we're moving from automation through to education and ultimately through to demystification. There's a great book called The Future of the Professions by Daniel and Richard Susskind, and they articulate what technology impact is going to occur on professions, not just accounting, not just bookkeeping, and I think we should view bookkeeping as a profession, but legal and medical and clergy and teaching. It's taking us to, automation's our start point. A nice, easy, sort of low-hanging fruit point to start. Technology companies really exist to automate, in many cases, business processes. So their goal is for the end customer to have that benefit. But I think we can then all play a very distinct role in taking that a lot further and driving demystification of our industry and of our profession to essentially free up latent demand. There is a lot of latent demand. There's a lot of education that's actually needed in small business, and we just haven't been getting to it because we've probably been bogged down in just doing the work. And data entry is one piece that's obviously going to disappear significantly. And so we need to make ourselves sort of redundant of tasks that we currently undertake. Look at your current task list. What things can be made redundant? What areas is technology going to make redundant? And get on the front foot and actually make yourself redundant in those tasks yourself, because then you're in control.
I was going to say that's absolutely timely, isn't it? Because we've seen some recent debate over the last couple of weeks of accounting firms looking to move into simpler bookkeeping functions and going head to head with bookkeepers. As you said, in part that's driven by the movement in technology. And we're even seeing accounting firms opening or buying their own bookkeeping divisions. But I think there's a quote I read recently from one of our favourite bookkeepers, and she basically said that we are moving into each other's space, and you can't avoid that. And I think there's a fair truism in it. How do you see this space evolving? Do you see a start of a movement, or do you see we are where we are?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I read with interest those comments too from firms, actually, large firms, actually, not only in Australia, but globally, looking at great interest with bookkeepers and starting to talk about bookkeepers. Large-scale professional firms didn't really bring bookkeepers into the conversation, and now there's a strong interest in bookkeepers. Now, I think it's more the realization that the bookkeepers are connected. They have these strong relationships with the end client, and that is extremely attractive to accounting firms that may only see the client once or twice a year traditionally. So there's opportunities and threats on both sides here. I think opportunity, you've got to watch out that we're not being opportunistic, accounting firms being opportunistic, saying, hey, I want to go for top line revenue. I want to chase down bookkeeping. I think that's going to shore up my top line. Are they then committed to actually putting in business processes and systems as running bookkeeping businesses? There's a question mark over that. I think firms need to be very careful. We saw this in before. A lot of this is just rinse and repeat here. It's like it's another one of those. And what I'm talking about there is year 2000. Just all of this happened back then as well. Accounting firms took a very strong interest in creating bookkeeping back office divisions. And when GST came in, essentially what was happening is clients were sort of stuffing it up, and the bookkeeping fraternity didn't exist to sort of sort that out en masse. So firms got frustrated. They saw that, well, look, this is a bit of a mess. We better take the lead on this and get this sorted. But what they tended to do is take ownership and control of the books. Instead of participating in an educational process, perhaps with the end user client, and then involving, bringing bookkeepers in as a resource to actually put into those firms and partner with small business. So I still think that should occur, and have a conversation with clients. Is just taking over the bookwork and using cloud technologies to automate the bookwork may not be the answer. The client may need to be educated and take more responsibility for their bookwork, or the accountant could place a bookkeeper in that small business, or someone who can assist and guide them, on a quarterly, monthly, or, I dare say it annual, but it should be more regular than that, obviously, to actually make sure that a result comes into the firm that's of quality at the end of the day.
Mate, I guess the reverse to that's also out there at the moment as well. We're seeing bookkeepers proudly stepping out from behind traditional roles of reconciliations and BAS and the like. And we're seeing a lot of our members becoming involved in business system work, in value-added consulting style areas such as forecasting and budgets and analytical work and payroll and data management, stock systems and the like. So could, in fact, the shoe be on the other foot here? And should accountants be looking over their shoulder?
Yeah, well, I think the bottom line here is paying attention to what the customer needs are. And the client is the customer. And we need to have the client at the centre of all of this, not just thinking of maybe our own top-line revenue or shoring up margin or whatever it is. If we can pay attention to what the market needs and wants and what they're prepared to pay for, and then upskill ourselves to deliver those services. I think it's been frustrating from the small business community. We've run surveys in the past where we've asked clients, would you use your accountant if you didn't have to lodge a tax return? And 52% said yes, but 48% said no, I'm not quite sure. So half the business could disappear if it's just a compliance. But then we also asked, well, what other services would you like? And we listed out 15 services that we know accountants can offer. And the clients, en masse said, yes, I'd like business structuring or wealth creation or asset sort of management or coaching and mentoring and all of those sorts of things. I think just the point that you touched on there is, I hear bookkeepers initially be concerned about the technology creeping in on their tasks. The reality is there are so many services that quality bookkeepers can deliver to a small business without actually encroaching on the accountant, or partnering with the accountant to say, hey, what if I did this? This would help you achieve that. And cash flows and budgets are just a perfect example. The amount of small businesses in Australia that do not have a budget set up that's properly monitored and maintained, and cash flow forecasts, the majority don't have that. 90% would not have that. So beyond just getting the BAS and the bookwork done, could we construct a draft budget, for example, and then bring the accountant into that conversation? You as bookkeepers are going to have accountants that are going to take advantage of that. They're going to run away with the client, and maybe you'll lose some business. But I think en masse, there's abundance out there. We haven't been delivering as a profession on the needs that the clients actually have. We've been probably a little bit comfortable delivering on the things, the BASs and the reconciliations that we are comfortable with. I think it's time to step out beyond that, as you said, and move into those other value-added areas. And, if we want to know what those are, just ask the client. That's probably the perfect place to start.
Yeah, great place.
Mate, that's good. And that sort of confirms a bit of my thinking is that the stuff I've been reading of recent time, and we touched on just a moment ago, is, they've all got adversarial undertones. But if we just dismiss the turf war thing for the moment and ponder whether the better outcome for everyone is for bookkeepers and accountants to work together in some form of a strategic alliance, in my mind, that allows the team to work more closely on a client-focused outcome. The best result with the best technology, with each of the advisors focusing on what they do well. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been talking about this for years, but it's your circle of trust. I love that movie, The Fockers. I'm watching you. But you are building this circle of trust, and who's in the circle of trust? Well, essentially, it's the ABCs for SMBs. Is the way I've sort of pictured it in my own mind. And ABCs are accountants, bookkeeper, consultant. I think the technologist needs to come in here as well. You may be wearing a couple of those hats. If you're a firm, well, one thing I'm definitely not saying is I'm not saying to accounting firms, stay away from bookkeeping. If you want to build a bookkeeping business or bring bookkeepers in, But mind you, there's a perfect opportunity here for bookkeepers that want to realise their asset perhaps as well. There's firms that actually have a strong interest in rolling up firms, bookkeeping firms and businesses into their own firm. We're not going to stop that. There are firms that some are going to take that on, but they better take it on very well. They better take it on very professionally, because the client ultimately will reveal as to whether that client stays with them for those services in the future. We've saw the same challenge over the years with financial advisory and accounting firms, as an opportunistic sort of play, and rolling up accounting firms into large groups. There's been checkered history and past around that, and checkered pieces of success and some dramatic failures as well. So I think there's just this amazing opportunity for bookkeepers to, there's a great book by Cal Newport called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it's a Steve Martin quote. And if you're looking over your shoulder, constantly worried about, what someone else is taking from you, or what you're losing, this sort of mindset, switch it out to say, just become that damn good at what you do that the world just says, I want what you've got. And, I think that one thing I would encourage accountants and bookkeepers and consultants to double down on this, because these are professions within a profession, if you want to look at it like that, and they take commitment. You cannot, if you're a accounting firm, you cannot dabble in bookkeeping. If you're a bookkeeper, you cannot dabble in software. You need to actually decide, what am I going to double down on here and become great at?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Mate, we might finish up the collaboration session there with a little bit of a poll. So if I can just launch this first poll there. Hopefully that appears on your screen pretty shortly.
You guys are technology wizards.
Oh, mate, aren't we? We're getting better at it.
We have got it.
So we just want to find out from our listeners, what do you think the impact has been on the bookkeeper-accountant relationship as a result of cloud technologies? Do you think it's been a positive, a negative, or a neutral in terms of collaboration between bookkeeping and accountants? Just got the numbers rolling through there. Give you a couple more seconds to hit your button.
The first person has just voted. We've got 2.
All right. That looks like it's slowing up. So I'll pretty much end the polling there. At the end, it's a pretty tight race, to be honest. I'll just share those results there. Hopefully they come up on your screen. So we can see there the positive result comes in at 55%. We've got about 14% of the negative, but there's about 31 saying that it's unchanged. So it looks like the collaboration in terms of our listeners, at least in terms of cloud technology, has seen either a neutral or a positive collaboration. So that's great to hear. What do you think, Clayton?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether the neutral unchanged was starting from a base of negative or positive to start with.
That's a good point.
I think, the negative, I look at different regions too, even around the world. I think the Australian market is maturing very well. We've had cloud in our space for, really, 7 or 8 years now. And the bookkeeping profession really was early adopters to the cloud technology piece. Whilst on face of it, it looked like a huge threat. I think those bookkeepers, and we're seeing them really leading the world. The model examples, a lot of Australian bookkeepers are seen as world leaders and mentors, if you like, to other parts of the world as to how to put your business together and how to respond to the change of what cloud technology was bringing to you. So the accountant bookkeeper piece, that's probably around about what I would expect. And I probably thought maybe a little bit more negative at this stage, but that may be an indicator of your well-educated audience being ABN members too. So it might not be indicative of all across the board.
Or Kelvin could have been rigging the poll.
That's right. If he'd just been voting 1,000 times.
I saw he voted more than once.
That is a possibility.
All right. Can we just turn our attention to the moment to the issue of referrals? And before I do that, I'm just going to launch another little poll because I just want to see how where's that one? Close that one down. No, it's not going to let me do it. All right, we might just move on. Technology, mate, still having difficulty with it. But all I was going to say was that our survey itself actually highlights that about 60% of our bookkeepers enjoy pretty solid referrals from accountants. And I was just going to try and get from our audience a little bit of a gauge as to whether that percentage held true for our audience tonight. But Clayton, do you think that trend's going to continue or decline, given that early discussion on that blurring of the role and the line in the sand changing a bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, I just read a survey result from the US 2 days ago, really affirming that, as well as the most prevalent referral source has been other professionals for accountants and bookkeepers as well. So it seems to be universal. I look. This is going to, come down to sort of decisions that each professions are going to make. And, I'm seeing there's sort of this trend to the all-in-one sort of end-to-end solution, one-stop shop firm that is picking up bookkeeping, picking up consulting and cloud technologies. That takes a big commitment to do that all the way through at a high-quality level. And then there's also bookkeepers that are now positioning and building their businesses. There's a lot of attractive recurring business in bookkeeping businesses that, and some accounting firms will only do compliance, and they've made that call, or they'll just do audit, so they have to outsource and refer as well. I'd probably go back to why this even happens in the first place. Why do referrals occur or not occur? A lot of it, the feedback we've got over the last probably 6 months running events here in Australia and the US has been some frustration. Accountants, on one hand, when I run events, actually, I get accountants in the same room as the bookkeepers. I actually put them on one side of the room and say, accountants, tell us what you're looking for in a great bookkeeper. Bookkeeper, tell us what you're looking for when you would refer an accountant. And essentially, a lot of it comes down to communication and also trust and alignment of values as well. So there's actually, I think there's just an abundance of, the need is out there. And accountants then say, where do I find quality bookkeepers? They're still saying that. I can't believe that we're still having this conversation. And then bookkeepers are saying, well, how do I find accountants to refer? And we may want to drill in on that a little bit, because I think, fundamentally, I think we need to start from, well, why is a referral even needed or wanted in the first place?
It's a big issue, and look, having looked at surveys, what's it called? Ghosts of Christmas Past, Ghosts of Surveys Past, and had a sneaky look at some of Kelvin's early results for this one, and that last poll, it's telling us that the bookkeeper accountant relationship is still very, very strong and not waning here. So the big issue then is, in my mind, is around focusing on communication. So I just got a couple of questions on communication between bookkeepers and accountants, and maybe you can give us a little bit of insight. So what is a sound communication strategy that a bookkeeper might have when dealing with accountants? Give us some traits of what would be a good communication policy likely to yield a nice, friendly relationship.
Yeah, well, I think you need to, first of all, start with empathy, understanding what it is that the accountant actually needs and wants and is trying to achieve. I mean, at the end of the day, we've got the mutual client, and it's not a us versus them. It's like, if you come from the mindset of, how can I help you win? How can I help you get a better result with your client, build a stronger relationship with your client? What if I, as the bookkeeper, was the catalyst for actually making that happen? Because accountants are feeling threatened as well. Technology is rattling their boat. So they are actually feeling under a lot of pressure. So how can you, as a bookkeeper, strengthen the client-accountant relationship? So then it starts to think, well, okay, what things can I do to make that actually happen? And I think on this, there's some practical points around this. We're talking about that budget earlier. Well, if you go to involve the accountant with the client, sometimes clients try to, might perceive the bookkeeper to be perhaps cheaper. And so therefore they might put more onto you because they want to actually get you to do the work instead of the accountant. So we have to watch out for these markers, if you like, and we need to call the client on that and say, look, hey, I think we should work with the accountant. Why don't I deliver to them some pre-information here that'll actually enable them to add better value to your business, or bring in, an updated budget, for example. Or identify opportunities. Go out of your way to identify opportunities to get the accountant involved. There might be some conversation around a change in the business, looking at new you might be trading in another state, or looking at international trading, for example. Well, initiate the conversation with the accountant. You build a relationship with the accountant, first of all. If you have a client, you should know who the accountant is. you should have an open conversation with them. Hey, go in and see them. Say, look, I'm the accountant for XYZ. Is there anything that is occurring in this file that's actually causing you some grief? And then be open to hearing what it is and asking, well, how can I help stop that happening for you? And then look at that whole mentor-mentee sort of relationship. Look at the accountants as a mentor to you. And I think most accountants that I talk to, are happy to step into that role to actually help and educate bookkeepers on more things that will help them and actually help the client. But you need to get your ego out of the road, and you need to actually be very open to focusing on what the needs of the client are and helping the accountant.
Yeah,
makes
that's
sense,
a great point.
Part of the ego, and it all works. Yeah, and you made a good point there, and I think an earlier Bookkeeper Radio we did with Charles Clavana said, one of his strategies is to make the accountant look good, and it comes back in spades.
It's also, Clayton, I think, just identifying the roles that bookkeepers and accountants are going to do. And as you pointed out, sometimes I think there's a lot of double up between, where a bookkeeper finishes off and where an accountant picks up. But if the two parties actually sat down and actually spoke about things like, assets and depreciation schedules or cash flow forecasting or whatever, I think there'd be a great outcome for the client and a much better relationship that exists between bookkeepers and accountants.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, another little example on that is, and this all comes back to taking responsibility. As the bookkeeper, take responsibility for the books. I mean, at the end of the day, where a lot of clients are missing out is that end-of-year balancing journal. And I know the theory is that cloud technologies, this should just happen automatically, but the reality is it's still not. And so I do hear bookkeepers say, the accountant didn't do the journal. And the accountants sort of saying, well, I don't really need to because I just look at the movements each year and I've got the single version of truth anyway in my office. Well, if we just leave it at that, the bookkeeper might be a bit disgruntled, the client's none the wiser. But if you take the initiative and say, hey, I'll do the journal, I'll grab those journal entries, or if it's never been done before, I'll go through the balance sheet and actually create that journal entry to get it squared away. And then I'll write a letter or an email to the accountant to say, look, I've balanced it up. It's perfect to your figures. If you have any issues next year with an opening balance issue, let me know. In fact, I'll spot it before you spot it. Yeah. And take responsibility on that. Just very simple.
Mate, can you give us a couple of quick hints on breaking the ice? So if you're a bookkeeper and this, your client's got this accountant, maybe even is a bit crusty, how do you break the ice? Give us a couple of icebreakers. Not crusty. You are.
What, a beer at the local pub? I mean, what are they like? I just think, that humility of, hey, I'm the bookkeeper for Fred. Is there anything that I can do to help you? And, I'd be trying to arrange a catch up, but with the accountant, perhaps not necessarily with the client at that stage, because you want to talk about things that maybe, together that it's relevant for you two to sort them out, and the client at that stage probably doesn't even need to get involved, but then proactively get a sit down with the client together and with some strategy that you've worked out in advance, and drawing those lines of demarcation, and that can be quite different for all sorts of clients, but have those lines of demarcation in place. That way you both know you're going up to here, I'm taking over from there. We're all working together in that circle of trust. But then beyond that, is actually then upskilling yourself in terms of the technology piece. Don't be afraid of that. Look at workflow. Look at, if you start having a conversation with the client and the accountant, like you might be talking to the client about e-commerce integration or a point of sale system or job management, tracking, inventory costs or importing or landed costs. Just get familiar with sort of the terminology that's actually in the business. And, look at technology pieces, because that can actually start to differentiate you immeasurably. And then the accountant, will just start to see you as, the true expert or the connector that they can partner well with.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? Once the accountant is aware of your skill set, then they're more likely to initiate a transaction back the other way. If they get a decent result in point of sale, they
absolutely
go, geez, I know Beryl, she does a magnificent job with point of sale. Client rings about point of sale. What's he going to think? I'll go and learn about it, or I'll bring in Beryl. He'll bring in Beryl every time. Okay.
Yeah, and accountants, are just are great connectors usually too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the backstory of it, I know when I was an accountant, I always used to laugh about this, but it was sort of true that we knew a little about a lot of things. We're in some areas quite generalist, but we certainly had some specialties as well. And so if we're aware that someone else handles that really well and we know, like, and trust them, then we will connect them.
Yeah.
But if we don't have those other first three pieces, it'll be like, well, I don't know who to send you to.
Yeah, except for crusty buggers like Kelvin. Like, he already knows everything.
Most things, mate. Most.
Yeah, well, a beer on the golf course. I mean, geez, you've got Kelvin every time.
Hey, we're getting closer and closer to some questions, aren't we?
We are.
Actually, one more here for Kelvin before we jump into, or getting closer to viewer questions. Are there any forums out there that that help facilitate bookkeepers and accountants loving each other more? That you're aware of?
Well, you know what? I go to a lot of events, and some would say that I'd go to the opening of an envelope. I'm pretty much at everything that's going around. Yeah, and it was a good show actually. That was awesome. No, you open it. No, you open it. You do it. So I think events, the face-to-face events, that's where you do make the real personal connections. And it's interesting, isn't it? In this technology-based world, we're more focused on tech. We've got more tech around us. But it's the human touch, the actual human connection that it probably becomes more important. So seek out relevant industry events that would have the accountant bookkeeper. A lot of the technology guys, teams are building those types of events. There's independent ones. There's individual vendor events. Don't be afraid to get on a plane and go overseas. I'll certainly join you there. So that's a lot of fun as well. And just go with an open mind and curiosity. And ask quality questions. Shut up and listen. And just see how you could help.
Yeah, good advice. All right. Mate, we might get to a few of our listeners' questions now. So if you'd like to participate tonight, a couple of ways you can do that. Someone's been tinkering with my IT, so the Q&A is actually not on your screen. I've just noticed it's actually the chat. So we use the chat function tonight for your questions. If you have a question you'd like to ask of Clayton, but you don't want to come on live, then just type it in there, and we'll view it at this end and ask as many as we can. Alternatively, if you'd like to join us live, then simply hit the raise your hand button. I'll promote you to panelist and bring you on. Please
raise your hand. Actually, I've got a couple of questions here from chat. Before I get on the first one, there's one there from Charles Clavano. I hope I quoted him properly. He said the question was "woo," so that was a goodie. But there's another question here.
Charles.
There was another question here around the practice of accountants offshoring bookkeeping work, and I've been scratching my head on that of recent time. And everyone's saying, "Oh, isn't that going to be terrible?" And all the bookkeeping work's going to go overseas. And to my way of thinking, and you correct me where I'm wrong, is as we continue to automate with bank feeds and AI and what have you, the need to offshore or the saving in going offshore is diminished. Maybe it's not negated, but it's somewhat diminished. Do you see it that way, or do you have a different view on it?
Yeah, there's two parts to this, I think. One is, why offshoring? And for some firms, it was about actual margin protection. So it was actually buying a service in at a cheaper input price than what they can currently get. But if everyone did that, then we're all back at square one again. And that eventually will occur. So the whole offshoring and nearshoring. And the other thing was actually there was this demand. They couldn't actually find the resource locally, for things like conversions. And so we're converting a lot from, desktop-based accounting software systems to cloud-based applications. So that sort of rudimentary sort of conversion process, checking the opening balances, making sure, opening trial balances agree to what we had in the old system and they've got in the new converted system, could easily and well be handled through an offshoring sort of process. But that's sort of one-off type task stuff. I've got a pretty open mind around this. I've met some fantastic offshoring companies that are very, very committed, very skilled in what they're doing. But I've also seen others that have been quite a challenge. So it's certainly not for everyone. It doesn't have to be for anyone. I think if you actually commit to building a team here, you can well and truly do that. And there's a lot of advantages, that intrinsic cultural advantages just in your team, having it all in country. But look, it's available in the marketplace. And I don't see it being a huge threat. I mean, it's automation. It's, automation will cut through that completely, or the whole AI movement of pre-coding and automating those transactions and management by exception in the data entry piece will sort of take a fair bit of that out as well. It comes back again, I think, to that human connection. Clients, I think, ultimately still want to have that conversation or know that I can speak to someone. and connect with them. I think that'll be around for a long, long time to come and may even become more prevalent.
We need someone, Kelvin, to stick their hand up and ask Clayton a tough question. Come on. Charles, you're there.
Bring it.
I know you're there.
Question.
Oh, no, not Charles. Not Charles. I'm going straight to the green man if Charles comes out with one.
We want a stumper.
Well, while we're just waiting for a few more questions to pop up, a little bit of crystal ball gazing, Clayton, if I could. Been a lot of talk lately around accountants and bookkeepers merging businesses. Do you see that'll be a continuing trend, that M&A space in our professions going forward?
Yeah, I think that will continue. As I said, there's great opportunities for those bookkeepers. I mean, just probably going back a step here, I hear bookkeepers say at times, if I can only find a couple of accountants to refer me. I think the challenge with that is you need to be ready. If accounting firm actually, and there's cultural alignment, there's shared values, and they can see that you're professional and consistent, they'll test you out and try you out, maybe with a couple of clients to start with. But if that tap gets turned on and you're trying to hunt down 2 or 3 firms, you better be ready to actually support the influx of clients at a quality level that's not going to break you and break the relationship. So it comes back to bookkeepers building businesses if you want to. I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to build a bookkeeping business model, then that's congruent. Accounting firms will probably refer to people that they feel as they got alignment in the business processes and systems and the ability to support a multitude of their clients. So you need to gear up for that. I think they will. There'll be the M&A piece. There probably could be M&A in bookkeepers to bookkeepers. I know we've had the franchise bookkeeper groups and very successful over the years, and a number of them. I think bookkeepers will probably buddy up a bit more themselves. Maybe some will be specialists in particular technology suites or industries. I think that's a great opportunity. If you've got an industry of clients or a group of clients that you become specialists in. But accountants, I think it's a connected piece. You're getting if you're getting quality data in an efficient way that then lays a platform to build off and leverage off through other services. It's really base camp. If you can't get that bookkeeping piece right, everything else is a bit of a struggle from there on. So it's incredibly valuable to firms, particularly whether that's in-house or outsourced and partnered with bookkeeping firms that are independent.
Yeah, for sure.
Clayton, you're in trouble now. Yep. The guy's put his hand up and he's going to tackle you.
We've got Bruce on the line.
Oh my gosh.
Bruce is going to have a shot here.
Okay, Bruce, what the hardest question for Clayton? What have you got for us? You there, Bruce?
Hang on, he's on mute.
No, he's not on mute. He may not have. Bruce, you there? Can you hear us? No.
Come on, Bruce. You can do it.
Bruce, come on.
Technology.
No joy.
Hang on.
I think I had this problem last time.
Hang on. Is he unmuted? No.
Yeah, no, he's unmuted.
Right.
Type it in, Bruce.
All right, yeah.
While Bruce, we're trying to promote Bruce. Another question, Clayton. This is what Bruce was going to ask anyway, I'm sure. Yeah. Paint me the picture of the perfect bookkeeping business in 3 years' time. What is it going to look like? What skills? What? I'm not so much interested in the number. What functions will it be filling? What role will it be serving?
I think the first point I'd like to make on this is that, and a lot of bookkeepers are solopreneurs, or maybe got 1 or 2 team members. The perfect bookkeeping business for me would be a business that provides quality of life. And how does that happen? By helping a lot of people as well. So it's set up in a way that fully taking advantage of automation, definitely straight off the bat. And more things have been automated so that you've got some sort of turnkey operation in your business. Why? Because really, if your value or the reward in business is sort of aligned to the number of people that you can actually help and the quality and the way in which you help them. So the genuine need and challenge out there is for people to have a quality set of books that they know exactly where their business is up to at any moment and point in time. And that also has some forecast as to where we're going as well. So it's a bookkeeper that's handling obviously the base camp bookkeeping piece, the reconciliations, every single work paper, or there's a work paper, every single balance sheet account, all of that is proofed. And then you review allocations in the P&L in readiness for the accountant to sort of wrap it out and maybe provide the virtual CFO services. And so, sorry.
Before you finish, You're talking about giving people what they want. I've heard you talk somewhere and you talked about a Zig Ziglar quote. Come on, give it to us.
Yeah, well, Zig's one of my heroes, that I've followed for 20, 30 years. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. But the quote really is that you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Yeah. And I just bought into that when I first heard it 20, 30 years ago. And it's in that order. Yeah. You got to help other people, you'll get what you want. Don't try and switch that around. I tried that a couple of times. It does not work. It's incredibly frustrating for both parties.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you halfway through.
No, that's right. So I think the value of firms is going to increase because you've got the types of income. I think it's not just the income we make, it's how we make it. And so you've got recurring active, and you've got recurring passive. And both those parts, and then you've obviously got active income that's non-recurring. So doing charge type jobs, billing by the hour, all that sort of stuff will diminish. But you're going to continue to build up sort of an asset value, recurring revenue piece per client that's going to be incredibly attractive for others. That maybe comes a time when you either want to opt out of the business, hand it over to someone else and pass it on at a fair value, or you're building an asset to actually keep. And I think someone's joined. I think we've got a question coming in.
You're in trouble, dude.
Seriously, have a look. What is he on a float or something?
Here he is. Right, mate, I want the hard question. I want the hard question.
Give it to him, Charles.
It's the Eskimo from the West.
How are we all today?
Very well, mate. Very well.
Outstanding, mate.
Clayton, you've raised many good points, and at Iron Books we certainly work with a lot of accountants, as we've said before. What's your view? The way I sort of see things at the moment is that bookkeepers are very eager to work with accountants and are usually quite happy to work with them. But we tend to see that accountants may not quite feel the same way about bookkeepers, and even some accounting coaching bodies that are out there actively saying that the bookkeepers are the enemy. And that's what they're saying to accountants. So what can we do to work with or speak to these accounting coaching firms that are actually out there telling accountants that bookkeepers are the enemy and that they need to kill them?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to convince someone, isn't it? I mean, I remember a quote once that, someone convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So if they believe that, you probably got to leave them where you found them, or using all your energy to try and turn them around. There's an opportunity cost in actually doing that. But I think quality work, your consistency, you actually demonstrating that that's actually not the case. Actually engaging with the accountant. Now, when I say the accountant, there's obviously the firm. There's firm owners. And there's people that are actually maybe other managers or the junior staff members, the team members that you're more dealing with. So they may not have that point of view, but the firm might have that philosophy. So it's a challenge for them as well. I think essentially what's happened is they've taken their eye or put their eyes on themselves, not on the client at the end of the day, and playing out that opportunistic sort of piece. I think that the water will find its course. I think this will work its way through. Being antagonistic yourself around it is not the answer. And just continue to do quality work, stay close to the client, and continue to bring more value to the client yourself. And technology obviously is an enabler quite easily to do that. When we talk to small businesses, there is some trepidation about small businesses just having the accountant owning their end-to-end. Doing all the bookwork and then the tax out the other end. So I think businesses have some sort of trepidation about that, especially larger quality sized businesses.
Yep.
What's your take on it, Charles?
Yeah, much the same. Like you said, we can certainly prove them wrong. But I'd like to see a bit more of a strategic side where bookkeeping bodies, whether that's ABN, ICB and the other ones, somehow working closer with the accounting bodies to, actually bring us together. And like I said, I feel like the bookkeeper often, obviously there's always exceptions to the rule, right? But it seems somewhat that bookkeepers are eager to work with accountants, and accountants are kind of like, we'll take your bookkeeping fees off you or whatever. And certainly I'm not saying that's always the case. And as I said, I work with quite a number of brilliant accountants that love working with bookkeepers. But what can we do as industry bodies to actually try to work closer together and encourage that collaboration?
Yep.
That's a good question.
That's the real question.
Yeah.
It's hard one before Christmas, but not something Clayton can answer.
And I suppose one piece that we've done over the years, whilst we run a small bookkeeping division in the consulting business, we're not accountants anymore, just really to keep our hand in and understand the issues and concerns for bookkeepers. You know, in the past, what we did was we actually ran events with accountants. You know, we ran events for their clients. And you know what? Sometimes this turns out bad. You do lose. You thought there was a relationship in terms of, hey, you know, why don't I go do this for you? I'll educate your team on maybe cloud software or whatever it is. And then suddenly it just turns into this competitive space that suddenly all you've done is educated the competitor. It's really weird. But that's an opportunity to get better or better. And my view is to get better. And so, whereas I see a lot of people actually just drop the ball at that stage. And I feel as though, oh, you know what, I've just had a lesson. Okay, maybe I wouldn't do it like that away again, or I get clearer at the outset. Hey, what sort of relationship and partnership have we actually got here? Instead of just expecting and assuming. And that was my challenge that I did a bit. So I would be trying to engage firms in a way with, what pain point can I solve for you? Is it technology? Can I actually, why don't we run events together in actually helping clients automate? Doing myself out of a task, yes. Expanding, my exposure to multiple businesses, yes. And proofing and proving to the accountant that we are the ones that actually can deliver on this. And some firms will take advantage of you and some won't. If you just do it with one or two firms, high risk strategy. But if you went and saw 5 or 10, then, you know, the odds I think will work out.
Yeah, terrific. Charles, thanks very much for your contribution tonight. And mate, have a great Christmas.
Thanks, mate.
See you, Charles.
All right. Well, mate, I think that we're pretty much out of time. We've gone a little bit over tonight, but of course, we'd like to thank our special guest, Clayton Oates, for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Clayton.
Oh, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Kelvin.
Thanks, Clayton. You're very
Thanks
special.
to the Orange Man.
Thanks to the Orange Man.
Takes the stress out of bookkeeping. I'll stress buster here.
Yeah.
Have a great Christmas, everybody, and thanks so much for having us on the show. It's an absolute pleasure.
Terrific. Thanks, mate. All right, well, that brings us to the close of our first full year of Bookkeeper Radio. Pete and I have thoroughly enjoyed bringing you a range of special guest panellists throughout the year. Mate, thanks for your contributions. Look forward to a great 2018.
I can go now, can I?
You can go now. Thanks, mate. All good. All right. But, of course, a very big thank you to you, our listeners, as well. We've thoroughly enjoyed bringing you the show, and our audience has grown over the course of the 2017, and I think 2018 is going to be bigger and better.
Coming here, Pete. We were close by. Oh.
There he is. There they go. All right. So thanks, guys. Clayton, thanks again for your input tonight, and we hope everyone has a great Christmas and New Year, and look forward to bringing you Bookkeeper Radio in 2018. Thanks very much. Have a safe and happy Christmas. Good night.